So the state of Texas is creating a strike force to go after the ultra-violent Venezuelan prison gang, Tren de Aragua, which we were told doesn't really have much of a presence in the United States. What does Texas know that we don't? Let's get into it. Here we go. So most recently, we had the issue of county denies Tren de Aragua gang takeover at El Paso Hotel. Residents must evacuate. So we had this storyline and we watched the video. We showed video, we showed clips, we showed footage of just, you got a hotel that run by a slumlord that, no real oversight, and they just kind of let it go. The guy was operating the hotel with a partial occupancy permit for the lobby and then also for the first floor. Problem was there was a second and a third floor of the hotel, and he was just letting Tren de Aragua just run wild with what was going on in the hotel. But remember, it's kind of like Antifa, where, if you ask the higher up you go within the government levels, is that real? Oh, no. Antifa's a myth. It's, Meanwhile, federal building in Portland is on fire from firebombing from Antifa. It's one of those stories, right? It's one of those stories. It's kind of like the cats and the dogs in Springfield, Ohio. Now we're getting video footage of the blue barbecue with what appears to be cats on the barbecue. Yeah. So we had this story. And we know Tren de Aragua is on the East Coast. We know they're from New York all the way down to Florida. They're as far west as Portland. And they've got a presence in Texas. Is this shocking? Absolutely not. But what is shocking is mainstream media's their appalling inability to recognize that, when you let millions of people into the country, and some of them are from Venezuela, and we know that Venezuela has been dumping out its prisons, some of the prison gangs ended up here. Weird. Isn't that strange how that happens? Yeah. Abbott signed a proclamation declaring Tren de Aragua a foreign terrorist organization and directed Texas Department of Public Safety to create strike teams targeting the gang. Texas is always first on the line because they're right there, literally on the southern border. And I think they've got a better feel for exactly what's going on. Meanwhile, other states are like, bring all the Venezuelans in that you can. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And I should preface this with not all Venezuelans that have come into the United States, legally or illegally, are members of Tren de Aragua. Very small percentage. But the percentage that is in the United States doesn't need to be here, because we could have done a better job of vetting and just letting people come in. Just read an article on a family that came in from through Mexico that came in on the One Border, the app, and they weren't asked a single question about, what they're escaping from, why they want asylum here in the United States. And they came in on the Border app and just nothing. And they got dumped into Texas via Eagle Pass, and they just, here you are, just out on the streets. There you go. Good luck out there. Good luck. Given a court date and nothing more. Just, hey, why, what are you running from? What's going on? What's going on back in the home country, wherever that might have been? I can't remember. Maybe it was Venezuela. But you've got issues like this, happening all the time. It's ongoing. And yet mainstream media, that's not a good story. That doesn't support our newcomers theory that they all want to work hard, which, certain percentage probably do. But when you bring in millions of people, you're going to get a certain percentage of bad guys. And that's what we've been saying forever. And here they are, and these stories are popping up. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott on Monday announced the state's going to target Venezuelan gang that he said was notorious for brutal violence and murder and posed a threat to Texans' safety. All right, so Texas is doing something about it. What about the rest of the United States? What are they doing about it? Ignoring it. Those 3 buildings in Aurora, Colorado, they needed renovation anyway. Officials in Aurora, Colorado caught in that crossfire of, well, if we deal with it, then we're admitting that Tren de Aragua has a presence here. If we don't deal with it, then folks are going to say, what are you doing? And that's exactly the scenario that we've been discussing. At a press conference in Houston, Abbott signed a proclamation that declares the Tren de Aragua gang a foreign terrorist organization and directed the Department of Public Safety to create new strike teams of highway patrol officers, SWAT teams, helicopters, canines, and Texas Rangers to target areas with known Tren de Aragua activity. Now, it's my understanding, and everything that I've read, is that the gangs don't necessarily, or anybody in the country illegally, don't necessarily want to be situated across the southern border because it's pretty easy to deport them. Send them back to Mexico. Send them back to Mexico. Let them work their way through there. They don't necessarily want to, be that close to the southern border. So invariably, that's why they end up moving to places like Ohio, look at that on a map, Ohio, where they're offered all kinds of jobs. They've got the ability, and that's what the Haitians, they're offered all kinds of jobs, and it's an incentive to come into that community. Whereas the community, like the ones along the southern border, not as much opportunity there because they're continually overrun with literally millions of illegals coming into the United States. We will bring the full weight of the government against the Tren de Aragua by declaring Tren de Aragua a foreign terrorist organization, Abbott said before signing the proclamation. Texas will use the courts to halt their operations, use civil asset forfeiture to take their property, use enhanced criminal penalties to keep them in jail, behind bars for longer periods of time. I think that's totally reasonable. I have zero issues. I think there are zero shenanigans in there. This is how you need to deal with this type of threat. Meanwhile, you've got, governors of Colorado. You just got to help them out. Just got to help them. They're not all bad. They're not bad people. And you're like, hey, we're talking about a violent prison gang here, knucklehead. What are you doing? The governor singled out El Paso as a hotbed for recent criminal activity by suspected members of Tren de Aragua. Some of the stories I've read have been, they'll lure young ladies under 18, 12, 13, 14, stick them in a hotel room and pimp them out. So if you're okay with that kind of thing, I'd say, hey, be on board with Tren de Aragua, because that's, human trafficking and sex trafficking are kind of their bread and butter. He said residents there, and specifically of, migrants from Venezuela. He said residents there have recently been concerned about criminal activity in a local hotel where 20 suspected Venezuelan gang members were arrested. Not known to be there, but were arrested. El Paso County has denied the hotel was taken over by any gang. Of course, the county can't come right out and say, that's what we got going on. They have to kind of smooth it over. Well, by take it over, what do you mean? And then they weasel out on some technicality describing it and said it was shut down because of a lawsuit focused on broad criminal activity at the hotel by Tren de Aragua. Period. Full stop. This other nonsense. It drives me absolutely crazy when they describe something like that. And it's like, yeah, but by who? By who? Oh, yeah, it wasn't taken over. We closed it down because, this lawsuit over here. And you're like, oh, okay, well, there's a legal reason why they closed it. Because there's criminal activity by Tren de Aragua. So it's important to clarify that this lawsuit was not prompted by criminal activities attributed to any specific group or gang. Really? But you had 20 of them arrested at the hotel. So El Paso County Attorney Christina Sanchez said in a statement, all right, I want to be clear that in no time did we allege in our lawsuit that the hotel was taken over by any gang or group of individuals. No, but there was so much criminal activity going on by Tren de Aragua that you closed it down. Oh, yeah. So a lot of doublespeak, just a lot of description without really describing, or kind of these end around, descriptions. Abbott also said a law the legislature passed last year would be used against members of Tren de Aragua who smuggle immigrants. I think that's fair. I think any amount of human trafficking, I think any amount of sex trafficking needs to be punished. We've got, the Sean Puffy Combs, P. Diddy. That indictment came out. Ooh, there is some spicy stuff in there. You want to talk about possibly some human trafficking and some other sex trafficking, and I'll give you a little hint. How about freak off? They have freak off events. Yeah. Yeah. Check that out. Going to be doing a podcast on that. That's some wild stuff. If you're if descriptions of sex events and isn't your thing, then don't watch that. Under Senate Bill 4, people convicted of smuggling immigrants or operating a stash house receive a minimum sentence of 10 years in prison. That's how you do it right there. Hey, yeah, you come to our state and you monkey around. This is what's going to happen. 10 years in prison. And so what's that do? Hey, you know what? Let's not run through Texas anymore. Let's just go up left coast, west coast, best coast to California. Let's bring our folks in there. Yeah, because Texas, good Lord, they're going to put us in prison for 10 years for just a scooch of, human smuggling or scooch of sex trafficking. I mean, it's our job. This is our livelihood. And they're going to put us in prison for 10 years? No way. Let's just go up to Cali. Let's just go do that. We're not going to allow them to use Texas as a base of operations to terrorize our citizens, Abbott said in a press conference where he was joined by Department of Public Safety Director Steve McGraw and some other people. Abbott's announcement comes on the heels of false claims by former President Donald Trump and other GOP leaders of Venezuelan gangs taking over a Colorado apartment complex. No, those aren't false claims. Those complexes were essentially taken over. If you want to argue about how they were taken over, that's fine. But in all the footage that I have seen, they effectively were taken over. Yeah. To the point, here's how you know they were taken over. So city officials in Aurora had one building that was so overrun that they cleared it out within 6 days. Do you know how long that would take normally if you had a situation like this and it was, civilians requesting help? Because the attorneys for the lender on some of these properties have literally reached out to the city and said, hey, help us out here. We need some help. We need help because we've got Tren de Aragua here and we don't really know what to do. They have taken over these complexes. There's 3 complexes in Aurora that are kind of, in play. And by saying that, large areas of Aurora have not been taken over, I think it's very specific, but there were Colorado apartment complexes that the more I look at it and the more I hear and the more I read about lawsuits and about information given to the government in Colorado, I am of the understanding that yes, Tren de Aragua, one way or the other, can be said to have taken over multiple apartment complexes. And this whole narrative of, Tren de Aragua, they're not in Colorado. That just gets expounded to this ridiculousness. They didn't take over apartment buildings. Well, then why did you basically evict everybody in 6 days? Why did you do that? Well, because it was overrun by Tren de Aragua and they were, pimping girls out, running gang activity. We've got video footage of them just running through units. In July, the U.S. Department of Treasury declared Tren de Aragua a transnational criminal organization that posed a threat to American communities. Gang focuses on human smuggling, but is also engaged in human trafficking, extortion, and drug trafficking. Those are lucrative businesses. Why wouldn't they do these things? U.S. Department also announced reward offers up to $12 million for information leading to the arrest or conviction of the gang's leaders. So we've gone from, they're not here, that's racist. Venezuelans all coming into the United States. They're all good people. They're hardworking folks. They want to get in here. They want to get a foothold. Let's help them out. Unfortunately, we have let, without vetting them, a whole bunch of Tren de Aragua into our country, and they are setting up shop, and they are setting up shop quickly. The news cycle is, a database identifying who is involved in the gang does not currently exist, Abbott said, and Texas law enforcement officers will work to create one because they're new and, it's only a state like Texas that's recognized them. Everybody else is like, just help out Tren de Aragua. They're from Venezuela and they need our help. Help a brother and sister out, right? Yeah. Well, and more than 3,000 undocumented immigrants from Venezuela have been arrested in Texas for crimes, and another more than 200 are wanted. So, 3,000 have been arrested in Texas. Texas, big state, lot of population. But the whole deal is if we had a southern border that wasn't quite so porous, and if we had immigration policy, which actually vetted folks before they came into the country, instead of using parole to just dump them in. It's okay. Have them come in on the border app. Yep. Come on in. Join the crowd. It's party here. Party in the USA. I could sit up here and throw statistics at you and give you numbers as far as how many people are crossing and how many got away, said Cabrera, the Border Patrol Council's vice president. But none of that would really matter when dealing with the issue is that here we have this gang. Okay. All right. And so that's what they're doing. Across the country, gang's been linked to more than 100 law enforcement investigations, Abbott said, including the shooting of 2 New York City police officers. I think that's where it started. As far as the national media looked at this and went, oh yeah, we can't really cover this up anymore. We are not going to be able to cover this up. Therefore, got to start floating the story out. And that's one of the first places I remember hearing about it. And then hearing, hey, they're in Portland. You're like, oh, okay. Bigger population of Venezuelans in Portland than here. So anywhere you've got a population of Venezuelans, odds are you've got Tren de Aragua because, they're illegally immigrating here as well. Gang members get dumped out of their prison cell in Venezuela, and then they come here because we don't really have a border policy that stops them from infiltrating into the United States, period. Yeah. Okay. All right. It's a wild scenario, and you're going to have more and more and more of these stories coming out. It's not just apartment complex. It's communities. You've got them setting up shop in communities. One of my podcasts yesterday was law enforcement was saying, hey, we're going to have a big gang war because the communities that Tren de Aragua is going into, there's already established gangs there, whether they're MS-13, the Crips, the Bloods, whomever. They've already got footholds in these given communities. So now with Tren de Aragua coming in, setting up shop, making money, you're going to have turf wars. And so, word on the street literally is that Tren de Aragua is arming themselves right now. So is it a stretch to have Tren de Aragua running around with AK-47s and AR-15s? No, it's not. This is just what happens when you let a bunch of prison gang members into the United States and you're like, just go for it, guys. 2 thumbs up. But fortunately, you've got Texas doing just a scooch of pushback. That's the way I see it. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'll talk with you in the next one. Bye for now.